Welcome back, everyone, to the Halls of History and part two of my conversation with Anthony Javorsky, a shareholder of the Green Bay Packers. And don't forget to click subscribe below and the notification bell to always know what is next on the Halls of History. Just talked about draft, and obviously we've mentioned Notre Dame, Marshall. You were a big Notre Dame fan to begin with. Obviously, became a Marshall fan because you went there. Just talk a little bit about the connection that you have found between Packer games, Notre Dame games, and then I think even at one point you started to throw in Marshall games as well.
Yeah, Marshall was in there for a little bit, but then they
Yeah.
kind of Mark Snyder became the head coach, and it was just all losses. So it wasn't as fun to track. Again, I like all the teams that my dad roots
Mm-hmm.
for. He grew up Catholic at a Catholic school. The nuns obviously were big Notre Dame fans. They were
Mm-hmm.
from Wisconsin, and they were big Packer fans, and so that's how my
Oh.
dad became a Packer fan, just because of getting on the Nuns' good side,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's talking
Yeah.
football, talking
Yeah.
Vince Lombardi, talking Bart Starr. And
Oh.
so, as we would watch Notre Dame games on Saturday, Green Bay games on Sunday, it got to become a thing where like he and I just kind of noticed like, how come we can never have both teams win on the same weekend? Like, why can't we just have like a fun weekend where both teams win? So I
Mm-hmm.
started tracking um, Notre Dame games and um, Marshall game or Green Bay games,
Mm-hmm.
where if Notre Dame won on Saturday, Green Bay would lose on Sunday, or the Monday night game, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case. And vice versa. If Notre Dame lost, then Green Bay would win. And at one point, when I was calculating this all up, at one point it was like at an 88% success rate. Where I mean, just like ridiculous. Where I'm like, if I would bet on every game, like if I would bet on the Packers game based off of Notre Dame's outcome, at this point I would have made a lot of money. But I'm not.
Mm.
I don't bet. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a gambler. Like because I
Yeah.
would lose. Because again, I would bet too much with my heart, not with my head. But
Mm-hmm.
um, and I just started noticing that. Now I will say the last couple of years, it's been closer to the 50% range, but still enough to take notice. Because I have a friend. Um, who was also a Packers owner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we were we went to the Marshall Notre Dame game this past season at South Bend, and I was
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
tailgating with him, and he's rooting for Marshall. I'm conflicted. I'm wearing Marshall and Notre Dame stuff at all times. I'm high fiving everybody, just having a good time. Well, after Marshall won, I looked at him and I said, "Well, don't worry. That means the Packers are going to win tomorrow." And he was just like, "What?" And I was telling him about it. And he's
Uh-huh.
like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever." So through this whole season, every time Notre Dame, would win or lose this year, I would text him. I'd be like, "Yeah." And, sure enough, I mean, if you, follow along, both teams kind of got off to a rough start. Um, but Notre Dame kind of like up ticked a little sooner than Green Bay did.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Green Bay ended up losing, kind of the end of the year. So it was relatively accurate this year, not 100%, but I think it was still over 50% this year. But
I
yeah,
just
so if anyone out there, is listening and bets on games, don't take my advice, but um, that's something to keep track of. Check the Notre Dame scores on Saturday to know how to bet Green Bay on Sunday.
that was one that was always so funny to me. And the first time that you explained it, because then I would start paying attention too. And lo and behold, like you said, so many times you're right. Notre Dame would have that big win on Saturday, and you go, well, forget about the Packers game tomorrow. And sure enough, they'd lose, or yeah, Notre Dame would lose. And then you go, well, at least Green Bay is going to win tomorrow. And then sure enough, we look at the scores and go, oh, hey, how about that? Green Bay did win. It
And
was
the
so
the funny
bizarre.
thing is, a lot of times it was games. The one team would lose a game that they should have absolutely won,
Hmm.
and the other team would, win the game that they absolutely should have lost.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, Notre Dame, we're unranked. We haven't won a game all season, and we're playing, Southern Cal, big rivalry game in the Coliseum, and they're number one ranked. not that ever happened because Notre Dame is top 10 teams anymore. But you get the hyperbole there. Like it would be one of those things where like Notre Dame would go in and win a big game that they probably shouldn't have won, or would lose more than likely would lose the game that they absolutely should have won, and then the Packers would just do the opposite of what they should have done, and where it's like frustrating. Where I'm like, Notre Dame made that big win today. The Packers have they're playing the 0-16 Detroit Lions. We're gonna steamroll them, and it's just we lose by 100 or something.
Yeah, it's like the Packers are 9-0. Oh, they just lost their first one. Oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. Let's talk about fandom with Marshall a little bit here, because I remember going to the games with Captain Thunder and Herd Boy.
Yeah,
where did that come from with you and Brandon?
Us being immature and bored. So our other friend Brandon, who we also randomly, I met him because he and I had a bunch of classes together. You and him knew each other from the radio station.
Yeah,
and we just randomly all became friends and lived together. That all started my sophomore year, so your junior year, when he just he and I hanging out in the dorms, late at night, just like talking about superheroes and comic books and all the nerdy stuff that he and I would talk about. And we were like, man, we should dress up like superheroes. And I think it was probably like 4:00 in the morning, playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater on the PlayStation.
Oh yeah.
Just, kind of slap happy, just silly, where everything's funny. Probably we're endlessly quoting Mallrats and Dumb and Dumber. And it was just one of the, what, we should be superheroes and go to Marshall games. My mom was a seamstress, so I know how to sew. I can do all the stuff. So we went to Walmart and just bought a bunch of random stuff. And he was Captain Thunder and I was Herd Boy. And we were superheroes. We did that for 2-3 years at least, with the costumes and the masks and the goofy stuff and the capes and all that stuff.
It was hilarious. I loved it.
Yeah, we were on TV a few times. My brother, would call me and be like, "Man, I saw you and Brandon on TV the other night. You guys are interesting."
Oh yeah. No, that was a blast. That really was. We've been to a lot of football games together, obviously just Marshall, but we've also been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame several times together. We did go up just once when it wasn't the induction, so that way we got to see everything. It wasn't so super crowded, but then we went to so many induction ceremonies, and
good ones.
Yes, and ones that didn't have, the biggest names, some of them had some of the best speeches we had ever heard. You're sitting up there afterwards going, wow, and that got to be a lot of fun too. Unfortunately, it was starting to get a little bit more expensive, so we stopped going.
And more crowded, and just a lot of, they were going past midnight, you know what I mean? And driving 5 hours back and everything. But it's one of those things with when we went up to the Hall of Fame just that first time, just going around, like it was just like, it kind of gave you chills. Yeah. And it was just like surreal almost. And it was just really cool. And I remember when we were driving back, we were like, why don't we go to induction ceremonies? And that's when we started doing it. And
I had already been to 2.
Right. Yeah. Well, us as a group.
Yes.
But you had seen that one guy, Jim North Dakota.
Joe Montana.
Yeah, Joe Montana. But it's one of those things, like my wife isn't a huge sports fan. She likes sports. It's fine. She got really into that Notre Dame Marshall game, being a Huntington native. But, like she gets really upset when fans take it too far and, literally will fight or murder each other, shoot each other, like throw things on the field, be disrespectful to other players or fan bases and stuff. She really, just doesn't like that at all, which is fair. She's not wrong. So there's an aspect where she's like, I don't understand why you care so much about sports. But then, you watch like a ESPN, like E60 or whatever, like those specials that they do where it's just like, or even like when you're watching College Game Day and they always do that like piece where it just like brings you to tears every week. You know it's coming. When you hear like Tom Rinaldi get ready to tell a story, like you're gonna like need a box of tissues.
Yeah.
Um, but like going to the Hall of Fame inductions and hearing those people tell their story
Hmm.
of what football meant to them, what the fans meant to them, how playing football, maybe saved their lives, or just those things that like make football like human. Like if you don't feel something, then that's like weird to me. Like it's like that's like hard for me to understand how somebody can't hear some of those speeches and not tear up or get
Hmm.
goosebumps or get excited, like feel the same passion that they have. Um, and that's what, and again, a lot of times it came from the not necessarily that marquee player or that player that like played for the Packers that I wanted to see, or different things like that. A lot of times it was that one, player that you were just kind of like, oh yeah, I remember him, or oh yeah, I've heard of him before, or whatever.
Hmm.
And then they have this mind-blowing speech where you're just like, good grief, like there's not a
I,
dry eye in here.
Kevin Green had me ready to go play.
Mhm.
I mean, he had me amped up. I was like, man, let's get these seats off this field and let's
Yeah.
let's all just go throw the football around. But one of the ones kind of just going with you said there that really got to me was Curtis Martin and his
Mhm.
story.
Oh yeah, he was
Talking
fantastic.
about growing up in Pittsburgh, he, in the ghetto of Pittsburgh, had a gun pulled on him. I think was even shot at, something like
Mhm.
that, and talking about how he wasn't even a football fan.
No.
He said it was his way out. It can get me out of this. It can keep me out of trouble. It can give me a good life. And then when he talked about how when he was there at Hall of Fame induction week, meeting all the old Hall of Famers and seeing the fans again, he was like, I'm a football fan now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
how
and like
about that?
hearing stuff like that, because you think, at least I did, ignorantly, that
Mhm.
these guys grew up just like me, like with these dreams, out in the side yard, passing football with the kids in the neighborhood, thinking it's Super Bowl and you're going to catch the winning touchdown, and
Yeah.
that like you watch it every Sunday and Sunday night and Thursday and Monday and whatever other days now. But you idolize these players and you want to be them when you grow up, and then you hear this guy say that isn't what he didn't care about football. It was just his way out. It was, his means to,
Mhm.
basically just have, a life, let alone, whatever. So yeah, like it was kind of like, shocking for me to hear, stuff like that. But at the same time, super inspiring and also proving again
Mhm.
what sports can mean to people and what it can provide to people. And yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fanatic. I take the wins and losses. I'm excited when we win. I'm kind of in a bad mood when we lose. But at the end of the day, like I also know that I had no impact on the game. And it's just there for entertainment. But for the people playing, it's very real.
Oh yeah.
And that, I think is what fans, they need to
Mhm.
hear these types of stories to where they don't, take the wins and losses too personal themselves.
A couple of my favorite moments were actually from the same induction, 2008 when I went with my dad when Art Monk went in. Me and Art Monk right there as I'm knocking things down behind me again. But for one, when he went in, when he finally stepped up, the standing ovation that he got, because every year a little bit kind of like you and I do with Sterling Sharp. When is he finally going to get in? Everybody kept asking that. Every every induction ceremony, Tom Jackson and Chris Berman were saying, when is Art Monk finally going to get in? And when he walked out, and not only the crowd, and even fans who weren't fans of Washington stood up and were cheering, and the fellow Hall of Famers all stood up. That's kind of almost become a regular thing now that everybody does the standing ovation. But I'll never forget when Art Monk got that one. And he's never been one to like the limelight. In fact, he
Mhm.
even tried to step back. It's like, oh gosh, I can't do this. And Darryl Green shoved him back out on stage. He's like, no, you're going to take this, because you deserve this. You're going to get it.
Right.
But then also, too, Fred Dean, when he went in, former Charger and 49er, he's standing up on stage, he's talking a little bit, and then suddenly he goes, folks, I'd like to apologize. I have this speech written. I forgot my glasses. I can't read a word of it. He's like, I have no idea what's on my paper. And I think it was Lambeau, former Lions defensive back, walks up, hands him some glasses. He puts it on and he goes, this will work. Thanks. And then starts reading his speech. I mean, it was so great. Just kind of, again, moments like that let you also realize these guys are human. They're not just, oh, I play football, or, it's got a sense of humor. You're embarrassed by the limelight. You've got these other lives and things. I mean, so much. And then just with the nutcase fans that can also be there. When Joe Montana was going in, and this woman sitting next to me was talking about how Montana should be nominated for sainthood.
Yeah,
I'm
a little far.
I looked at my dad and I said, "Man, I thought I was a big Montana fan. This woman is crazy." I know he played for Notre Dame, but come on, really?
Yeah,
nominated for sainthood. I don't know about that one. I'm going to throw a few names out at you, and I just want to hear what goes through your mind now when you hear these names. Okay. Brett Favre.
I have always tried to keep players and people separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of former athletes have not had the best post careers, but that does not negate what they did on the field.
Mm.
And so I'm going to speak only on field Brett Favre.
Okay.
Gunslinger, obviously, so much fun to watch play, and such a big part of my childhood that, like, I will always look at his highlights and be very fond of those memories of him. Just you never knew what you were going to get. Was he going to throw 4 interceptions, or was he going to throw 10 touchdown passes, or was he going to do it all in the same game? You know what I mean? He was going to throw that interception, but that it was not going to stop him from just chucking the ball downfield on that next drive to try to get it back. And that's what I loved about him. And that's what was so much fun as a kid watching him play. He always had that smile on his face. He reminded me of, like, me and my friends playing, at the park, just he was like a little kid just playing football, doing what he loved. And that's what I will choose to always remember about Brett Favre, which is also why I was very disappointed with how everything ended with Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, I was very sour on him going to the Jets, and then and basically him going to the Jets just to trick them in my opinion, to get released so he could go play for the Vikings. Just so
sour's putting it mildly.
Oh yeah, I was very, very down on him for quite a while. And it really, I mean, it was like when he went into the Hall of Fame, I believe I remember actually you looking at me when he came out to talk, going, "Now aren't you glad you didn't burn his jersey?" Because you talked me off that ledge a few times. And yes, I was. That would have been a slightly over dramatic, but yeah, I mean, obviously, will go down as one of my all-time favorite players to watch, because it was such a big impact of my childhood. And that's the thing. My dad had Bart Starr, so I had Brett Favre. Again, I mentioned Don Majkowski was like, kind of like the beginning of it for me. But I mean, if Brett Favre didn't play for the Packers, if that trade with the Falcons never went down, and we just kind of limped along with like Cleveland with like 15 different quarterbacks in 10 different years, would the Packers have had the staying power for me to want to be a lifelong fan? If we were just a 3-13 team every year, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'd still probably have the great memories with my dad, but them winning and having those types of players like Brett Favre are a huge reason why, obviously, it was easy for me to like the team that my dad liked also.
Well, and you almost wonder too, just with Don Majkowski, had it not been for the injuries, because 89 wasn't exactly the best as far as wins and losses go, but I mean, he was slinging it. I'm pretty sure he went over 4,000 yards that year. And so that was one, was like, okay, is he going to be, it's been so long since Bart Starr, there hasn't been anybody else since. Is it going to be the Magic Man? And then unfortunately the injuries happen. And then here comes Brett Favre. Now, so with that, then, okay, next name, Aaron Rodgers.
Um, that's the thing. I don't know if how much you and I have actually talked about the divorce with Rodgers.
Mm.
Um, I understand. Like, I don't know if it's just because I'm older, more mature. I say that jokingly. Um, but but I understand this situation a lot better. Um,
Mhm.
I will never. I love Aaron Rodgers. I think he is honestly one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, especially that doesn't have the stats. I feel like I don't think it's a homer for me to say, maybe slightly, but we should have been to more Super Bowls than what we did with Aaron Rodgers.
Mm.
I feel like the Packers wasted a lot of his career. I think he was worth X amount of wins every season automatically. So because of that, we neglected the offense because we knew Aaron Rodgers was just going to bail us out. We focused a lot on defense, and a lot of it were bad picks. And I mean, all this attention to the defense for us to still just be a mediocre defense.
Mm.
Um, with all the attention that we've provided the defense, we should have been a lot better. So why did we just focus on the offense, give him some better weapons, and win a couple more Super Bowls with him? So I feel like, him being frustrated with the Packers, I don't blame him. Him going to the Jets, I'm fine with. I will be rooting for him. I absolutely will be. Obviously, I'm rooting for the Packers first and foremost, but I mean, if he wants to go there and do a Peyton Manning with Denver, I'm all for it. Get him another Super Bowl, please, because I do feel like he deserves it for the player that he is. Again, I mean, I know there's off-field stuff, and I mean, in 2020 there was a lot of controversy with him and everything, and it's fine. Again, I try to separate on-field and off-field.
Mm.
If we're talking on-field, I think statistically, he has to be among one of the all-time greats, personally, and just a lot of fun to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
just he's fun. He's good.
Well, I know Jets fans will appreciate you saying, yeah, sure, go get him a couple more Super Bowls because
Yeah.
they're probably going, yes, please. Yes, 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 yes.
And I mean, obviously, that is their number one intent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's clear with even a lot of the other moves that they made
Hmm.
this offseason to get him the weapons that I feel like the Packers never did. Putting forth some of that effort that the Packers just didn't do enough of, in my opinion.
I did actually have a fourth one, but we'd already talked about him, Sterling Sharp. So last one then, the new guy, Jordan Love. I know it's
Um,
still early, but
yeah. Again, I will say I was critical of when we drafted him.
mhm.
That 2020 season, which I know 2020 was just obviously just an odd year for a lot of things. But I will be the first person to admit I was very critical that I wore a Packers jersey on Sundays more than he did that season. And I feel like when you're going to have a first round pick, they should probably play on Sundays that first year. And I understand with quarterbacks it is a little bit different. And
I
I
was gonna
think
say
it
Rodgers
obviously
didn't.
say it does work better
No.
when you do have a guy sit back and observe a great quarterback like Favre and Rodgers. So if this ends up being that type of situation, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And again, I will never root against him. But I did at that point in Aaron Rodgers' I don't know if that's grammatically correct. Aaron Rodgers is his career.
Something like that.
If
Yeah.
I wanted a weapon. I think we could
Hmm.
have got a decent quarterback later on.
Hmm.
I still don't know what we have with him. From everything that I've read and other things online, his progress and understanding of the offense has grown leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, and I hope it has. I'll absolutely be rooting for him. I will love to love. Um, so that's what TBD on that. I hope he's not a bust. Just because I mean, also like you kind of feel bad
Yeah.
for players who literally he has done nothing wrong. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so for any fan base, like when you get drafted and you're not the popular pick or you're not the person that everybody wanted, you just want to go in and do your thing and succeed. And when you have a fan base that's already against you, yeah, it's got to be tough. There's
Ask Donovan McNabb.
exactly. And so, it's hard enough to make it in the NFL, let alone just to be drafted. So yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not going to hate on the guy. And even it's one of those things like now at this point, because it has been so many years since he was drafted and everything. If he is a flop and he is a bust, I'm not going to be I told you so, we shouldn't have. Um, it's going to be one of those things that, it is what it is. And I hope we're, again, not to keep dogging on the Cleveland Browns here, but I hope we're not the Cleveland Browns where we just draft a new quarterback every year, or at least in the first round.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I am. Um, it'll be nice to kind of hit that reset button. I think I'm hoping it'll be fun to watch him develop and kind of grow with this other young talent that is around him. And I hope, they developed a nice little core and win a lot of football games. We'll see. It's going to be tough though. I think the Vikings are still going to be the team to beat right now.
Well, I wonder how many fans, especially of the other NFC North teams, how they would be feeling if Jordan Love picks now. Okay, let's say maybe at least this first year is kind of like Aaron Rodgers' first year as a starter. It doesn't go that well. But then if he turns into, if you went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, what are the fans of those other three teams going to be thinking? They're probably going to be, you have got to be kidding me, not another one.
I mean, I hope that's the case. I hope that the Packers quarterback situation is like the Steelers coaching situation, right? You have all these teams that, have these revolving doors of coaches, and then you have the Steelers that have had three coaches since, 1841. But what? I mean, because Chuck Noll was
Chuck Noll to Bill
Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin. And it's weird to still think, for me, growing up outside of Pittsburgh, not a Steelers fan, but for me to understand now that Mike Tomlin has been there several seasons longer than Bill Cowher is weird, because I feel like Bill Cowher was there forever, because it was my entire childhood. So yeah, I mean, I would be more than okay with, you figure for 30 years we've had Favre and Rodgers. I'm okay if, in 15 years, you and I are discussing the Jordan Love to the Jets and insert new quarterback going to the Packers. Some kid who's 6 years old right now that's getting ready to be the Packers quarterback in 15 years because yet another veteran quarterback from the Packers is going to go to the Jets. I'll be okay with that conversation. If that's what happens, as long as we get another Super Bowl, because that's what, honestly, we can discuss how great it is to have that few of quarterbacks over the past 30 years, but 3 Super Bowl appearances and 2 Super Bowl wins, that doesn't sit well with me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I saw a stat the other day that was like, the Packers in 30 years, the Packers have had 2 quarterbacks and 2 Super Bowl wins, but Eli Manning was able to achieve that same thing in half the time.
Yeah. Well, you can at least, though, look at it for that the other teams in the NFC North, they haven't.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean,
they haven't been to the Super
Bears.
Bowl.
Yeah. I mean,
the Bears went once and lost, and the Vikings haven't been since they went 4 times in the 70s. The Lions, dear God, I don't know. But I'm actually
and a lot of quarterbacks on those franchises as well.
Yes.
A lot of quarterbacks.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned Pittsburgh, because this kind of takes me into my next question. So, do you ever get into a titles argument?
Yes, all the time.
With people? Yes.
All the time. And it's always the Steeler fans. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
What's funny with that is actually when I posted my video recapping the Packers' last Super Bowl win, and I put it up on Facebook, a Packers fan actually argued with me because he thought I was shorting them. And because he only heard the part where I said 9 titles. Because what I was doing at the beginning of the video, I said, you've got 2 monster matchups here. You have 6-time winners, 6-time Super Bowl winners in the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then the Packers, you have 3-time Super Bowl and 9 NFL titles.
That's addition.
And yes, I was going to say, for most people in school, when you say and, that means add. And so he commented and said, we have more than 9 titles. I believe it's 12, actually 13 now. And so I responded to him and I said, yes, I understand that, but I stated 3 Super Bowls. I said, and I was talking about as in before winning this one. I said, and 9 NFL titles pre Super Bowl days. And then he replied again, and he's like, yeah. So, and puts up a banner that shows 13 titles. And I said, dude, like, we're saying the exact same thing. It's like the only thing I didn't do was add them up for you.
Right.
He didn't respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
and
yeah,
you're 100% right. And I
yeah,
do get into the arguments with people all the time over titles. And
yes.
my argument is this. The Packers have always been in the NFL. We are not coming in from the AAFC or, like the Browns or other, we weren't a part of the merger. We were a part of the league that adopted all the other teams. So we have the NFL championships,
Yeah.
period. If next year they stop calling it the World Series and they start calling it the Fall Classic, does that mean that the Yankees no longer have 27 world titles?
Is it only 27? I thought it was 52. No.
You know what I mean? Like, so do we
Uh-huh.
stop counting the World Series titles now? Like, no,
Yeah.
we wouldn't.
Yeah.
College football went from polls to the BCS. Now,
well, and even before that,
we still count national titles.
Yeah, and before that, it wasn't even most of the time 1 meets 2 for a national championship.
Right.
1 might meet 12, but 1 won, and 2 might have won as well, but 1's still the national champion. Yeah, and
there are a lot of teams that will recognize non-consensus national titles.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like we have 4 national titles that year. Like, no, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's my argument. Is all of their championships were NFL championships. Yes. They just started calling them the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I do feel like the Packers get shortchanged on championships.
Yeah.
Just because they decided to call it something different because of the merger. Fine. When the WHA was absorbed by the NHL, those Stanley Cup championships still existed for those franchises. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like NFL is the only sport that has done this. Like I said, college football, you've changed the way it's done and what it's called and all that stuff countless times. And now you're going to expand more teams at some point. So what, that negates all of the Alabama national championships? Like, no, that doesn't make sense. So like, that's my argument. Like I said, if it was like a USFL team coming in, okay, that championship, I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything. It still has meaning, but it's not an NFL championship.
Yeah.
Packers have 13 NFL championships. Sorry, Steelers. Great job. You've done a great job. I'm not going to deny that, but we have more. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to get right into, I'm going to hit you with some Green Bay Packers trivia. I got 5 questions for you. Okay. Now,
I'd like to phone a friend. His name's Scott Hall.
Who were the Green Bay Packers named for?
The Acme Packers.
Actually, it was the Indian Packing Company.
Right. The Indian Packing Company, but they were originally called the Acme Packers. Because something to do, I don't know all the lore, but yes, the Indian Packing Company.
Yeah, well, what it is so Curly Lambeau got money from them to be able to buy uniforms and equipment, all on the condition of you name your team after us.
Right.
And it stuck. Yes. So there we go. Okay, number 2. All right, we've talked about in the draft how often the Packers draft a receiver in the first round. Who was the last wide receiver the Packers took in the first round?
I'm gonna be way off.
I'll give you a hint. He did play with Brett Favre, and definitely in that game after his father had passed away.
Was it Freeman?
Javon Walker.
Javon Walker. I did know that. I remember actually. I think you told me that one time. Yeah, Javon Walker. Yeah.
Well,
I do know the only first round wide receiver that Aaron Rodgers threw a touchdown pass to was a dude from WVU.
Was Tavon Austin there?
Tavon Austin. Like He was there the 2020 season or whatever, well
Okay.
past his glory days.
Well, here are the other ones for you. So 1988, Sterling Sharp. 1978, James Lofton. And 1973, a guy by the name of Barry Smith. He only played 3 years. Okay, number 3. Who was the Alabama Antelope?
Alabama Antelope.
Got to go way back.
Honestly, I got nothing on that.
Don Hudson.
I was gonna say what I thought he had more alliteration. And did he have another nickname?
The main one I know of is the Alabama Antelope.
I didn't think that was Hudson. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he had like Dancing Don or whatever, Tornado Tim Thomas.
Oh God. That might have to be a story for another time.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Number 4. Okay, so 26 times in the Packers history, a player has run for 1,000 yards in a season. Do you know who did it the most? And I'll give you a hint. He also holds the team's single season rushing record.
Was it Dorsey Levens?
No.
Edgar Bennett?
Yeah.
Is it
Edgar Bennett was nowhere near. Unfortunately, his 1,000-yard season was just barely over 1,000.
Say he didn't have. He had some
a
good seasons.
A little bit more recent than Dorsey Levens.
William Henderson, John Kuhn.
Do you want me to tell you?
Was it Jamal Charles?
He was a Chief.
Oh no, John. What's his name? That's with the Lions now.
Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams. Golly.
No. Amon Green.
Amon Green. Okay.
Amon Green. He did it 6 times. And he's got the single season rushing record over 1,800 yards for them.
18. Okay.
Yeah, he did it 6 times. Jim Taylor was 5. John Brockington and Aaron Jones 3 times each. Dorsey Levens, Ryan Grant, Eddie Lacy twice. Turdell Middleton in 1978, Edgar Bennett, and Tony Canadillo all the way back in 1949. That was the first one. I didn't realize
Lacy did twice and Ryan Grant. You said 3 times?
No, they were both twice.
Oh, both twice. Okay.
They were both twice. Okay.
I almost would have taken Eddie Lacy 1 and Ryan Grant 3.
So last one. Okay. You talked about how you wanted to be Reggie White. And I remember how on your college football game, you made yourself, what was it, a defensive end or a linebacker, and you rushed the quarterback like crazy. Okay. Who is the Packers' all-time leader in sacks? There's an unofficial answer and an official answer.
I was going to say this is always weird because the stats, when they started doing...
Well, officially we'll go 1982 on, but then there's unofficial now by a whole lot of research.
Kabir Bajabiola.
No. Okay.
He had some really good seasons in the early 2000s.
I'll give you a couple hints. Okay. Unofficial is a Hall of Famer from the Lombardi days. Official.
Nitschke.
No. Willie Davis. 99.5. Officially comes from a famous football family.
Oh, Clay Matthews.
83.5.
Yeah.
Yes.
I knew that. Yeah.
Okay.
I just remember like there were some years where KGB was on a tear.
Thanks for watching part 2 of my conversation with Anthony Javorsky. Stay tuned for part 3, the finale, next Friday, where we talk about some interesting draft facts with the Packers, fun stories from days in college, watching the Super Bowl, and perks of being a Packers shareholder. Plus, if you like the content here of NFL history, click subscribe and the notification button so you never miss an episode of the Halls of History.